Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Tonight on the Evan Miller Report, Daesh battles the Syrian army near a World Heritage Site. We have the latest on the continuing battle in Syria. At least 12 people are dead after an attack in Nigeria's Maiduguri city. We'll give you the very latest out of that region as Boko Haram continues their killing spree. There's no warships escorting a Yemenis-bound cargo ship, this according to the Pentagon, but the Iranians are firing shots at a commercial ship in the Gulf. We'll tell you more on that. And Senator John McCain is named a presidential aide, but not to the U.S. We'll tell you which country he's involved with. All that plus an update on the Trans-Pacific Partnership possibly going down for a vote tomorrow on the Evan Miller Report, your conservative news source. All those stories and more, plus Corey out.
Oh, man, if John McCain is involved with who I think it is. At any rate, drifting in the Andaman Sea or burning in a Manila sweatshop. That's a tough situation in both scenarios. George Snuffleupagus donated cash to the Clintons and is now on my bullcrap list, as well as others. In business, I'm talking about jobs, and, oh yes, jobs. New York City nail salon workers are suing for wages. Wow, what next? The hairdressers? Yeah, what next? The hairdressers? And Harry Shearer is moving out of Springfield. That's all coming up in this edition of your conservative news source. The report starts now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening from a rainy Southern California. I'm Jason Miller along with Corey Evan, and Corey Evan might be getting the first hints of the rain before I did in San Diego today.
Yeah, I actually walked across it just leaving the place I work earlier. I actually got drenched on my way over to the car, so just caught me off guard. That, ladies and gentlemen, you've got an umbrella, utilize it.
When it rains, it pours in Southern California.
Yeah, now I understand the old, quote, cats and dogs.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. And, of course, a full weather forecast for the rest of the nation with Sarah Keith Lucas of the BBC Met Office later on in the broadcast tonight. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we start off in Syria tonight, where Islamic State or Daesh militants are fighting government forces near an ancient city which is home to one of Syria's World Heritage Sites, part of major offensive in the central regions by the jihadist group that has destroyed antiquities in Iraq. Daesh fighters reached online said the group was shelling an air base near Tamakar, an oasis in the desert northeast of Damascus, also known as Palmyra. One of the fighters said it was also attacking areas around the town's prison where some of its members are believed to be held. The airport is also a major weapons depot. We want those weapons, he said. Syrian's Equities chief Magbo Al-Kiriam said the fighting was just 1 or 2 kilometers, which is about 1 mile from Tadmir, warning that if the militant group seizes the city, that, quote, they will destroy everything that exists there. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights monitoring the group said the militants had taken up positions outside Tamir, which is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, after capturing al-Shariki 46 miles to the northeast on Wednesday. An army source said fighting continued in the al-Shariki for a second day on Thursday, and troops were still in their positions. The Syrian military and allied Lebanese militants have been pushed back in the northwest and some south recently, but this week cleared insurgents from the mountains near the Syrian-Lebanon border north of Damascus in a notable advance. The observatory reported heavy casualties on both sides of infighting near al-Shirki on Wednesday, with at least 70 troops and 40 Daesh fighters being killed. Moving on to Nigeria tonight, where at least 6 civilians and 6 members of a youth vigilante group have been killed in an attack by Boko Haram militants on Nigeria's northeastern city, Maiduguri, 2 military sources said on Thursday, which is tonight, for tonight's broadcast. The attack was reported late on Wednesday in Maiduguri, which is the capital of Borno State and the birthplace of the Islamist Jihadi group. One of the sources said the vigilantes in the so-called Civilian Joint Task Force died after they mistook female suicide bombers for residents fleeing the Boko Haram raid. Boko Haram, which has killed thousands in its attempt, as we have reported on many times, to carve out an Islamic State in the country's northeast, is on the back foot following a coordinated offensive by military forces from Nigeria, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. However, Wednesday's assault shows it is still capable of pulling off many bloody assaults. Staying in the Middle East, Iran has so far refrained from deploying warships to accompany a cargo ship that Tehran says is carrying humanitarian aid to Yemen, despite its announced plans to do so. This coming from Pentagon spokesman Colonel Steve Warren, talking to a news briefing today. Yemen said on Wednesday that if Iran does not allow a cargo ship bound for the Arabian Peninsula to be searched, then Tehran bears complete responsibility for any incident that arises from their attempt to enter Yemeni waters. Meanwhile, Iranian Revolutionary Guards have fired warning shots today at a Singapore-flagged commercial ship in the Gulf that had collided recently with an Iranian oil rig. This, according to U.S. officials speaking today. After hearing a radio call for help, the United Arab Emirates dispatched Coast Guard vessels to aid the tanker and the Iranian boats, then departed the area. According to U.S. officials, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard vessels tried to intercept the Singapore flagship, the Alpine Eternity, in order to settle a legal dispute stemming from an incident back on March the 22nd of this year, when the Alpine Eternity reportedly hit an Iranian-owned oil platform. A U.S. official speaking on condition of amnesty told the AFP news agency. The official said, quote, Iran claims that the vessel is liable for damages to the oil platform, end of quote. The incident reflects rising tensions in the Gulf, fueled in part by the conflict in Yemen, as we reported earlier, that pits the Iranian-backed Shiite rebels against pro-government forces supported by a Saudi-led coalition of Sunni Arab states. To the Baltics now, where the Baltic states have formally asked NATO to deploy several thousand troops as a deterrent to Russia, Lithuania said today, but the alliance gave no assurances that the request would be accepted. NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said at a meeting of the alliance's foreign ministers in the Turkish city of Antalya that he was aware such a request was being made, but emphasized it was too early to assess the demand. And over to Ukraine, where their President Petro Poroshenko has appointed Senator John McCain of the U.S., who is known as the hawkish U.S. Senator in Washington, D.C., as an advisor, and is to send lethal weapons to the war-torn Ukraine as his advisor. According to the Petro Poroshenko's administration, Ukraine's pro-Western authorities are putting together an advisory council to help the ex-Soviet country conduct reforms and build global support for the Ukraine. Pending his agreement, McCain will become a member of the council along with Carl Bildt, the former prime minister of Sweden, known for his vocal criticism of Russia's President Vladimir Putin, according to a decree released by Poroshenko's administration on Wednesday. Interesting news coming out of Ukraine tonight. Not often you have a U.S. senator named as an advisor. Over to Israel, where Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu presented his proposed government for the approval of Parliament. where his coalition commands a razor-thin majority. Netanyahu's new administration marks a shift to the right by giving increased prominence to the Naftali Bennett's far-right Jewish home government, which opposes a Palestinian state and strongly backs settlement activity. The move looks likely to complicate Israel's already damaged relationship with the Palestinians and further strains ties with the international community. After 2 months of coalition horse trading, Thursday session was delayed for another 2 hours to give Netanyahu more time to placate senior members of his party who were dissatisfied by the portfolios that they had received. All right, folks, I'll be back with your UK news brief in just a moment, but first going to send it over to Corey Evan, and he has an update on that situation over in the Mediterranean regarding those migrants tonight. Corey.
Actually, this is off the coast of Thailand. I miscommunicated it earlier. I was talking about the Andaman Sea. That's off the coast of Thailand. A wooden fishing boat carrying several hundred desperate migrants from Myanmar was spotted adrift in the Andaman Sea between Thailand and Malaysia on Thursday, part of an exodus in which thousands of people have taken to the sea in recent weeks, but no country has been willing to take them in. Cries of "Please help us, I have no water" rose from the boat as a vessel carrying journalists approached. "Please give me water," was one of the quotes. The green and red fishing boat, packed with men, women, and children squatting on the deck with only plastic tarps to protect them from the sun, had been turned away by the Malaysian authorities on Wednesday, passengers said. They said that they had been on the boat for 3 months and that the boat's captain and crew had abandoned them 6 days ago. 10 passengers died during the voyage and their bodies were thrown overboard, the passengers said. It was unclear Thursday whether they would receive that help, however, despite the presence of a Thai Navy vessel, which arrived after being alerted to the boat's presence by the New York Times. Instead, the presence of an estimated 6,000 to 20,000 migrants at sea fleeing ethnic persecution in Myanmar and poverty in Bangladesh has created a crisis across the region, with countries pointing fingers at one another and declining to take responsibility themselves. Most of the migrants were thought to be headed to Malaysia, but after more than 1,500 came ashore in Malaysia and Indonesia in the past week, both countries declared their intention to turn away any more boats carrying migrants. Thai officials have not articulated an official policy since the crisis began, beyond convening a regional conference to discuss the problem this month. Thailand is not known to have allowed any of the migrants to land there. The Indonesian Navy turned away a boat with thousands of passengers on Tuesday, urging it on to Malaysia, while the Malaysian authorities turned away 2 boats with a total of at least 800 passengers on Wednesday. Talk about passing the buck there, right? Oh, man.
Indeed.
And the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has asked regional governments to conduct search and rescue operations to no avail. Jeffrey Savage, a senior protection officer with the agency, said, quote, "It's a potential humanitarian disaster." You think? Any rate, many of the migrants are believed to have been abandoned by their traffickers with little food or water. Indonesia's chief military spokesman, Major General Fuad Basya, said Thursday that the military would, quote, "push back any boat that wants to enter Indonesian waters without permission, including those of boat people like the Rohingya." 72 people died in a huge blaze at a footwear factory in the Philippine capital, authorities said yesterday, as angry relatives and workers described sweatshop conditions, including dismal fire safety standards. Well, knock on trouble's door and trouble comes right to it. Anyway, this from The Australian. Firefighters and police pulled dozens of corpses out of the ruins of the 2-story building yesterday, a day after the blaze trapped the terrified workers with apparently few exits and no fire safety training. Sparks from welding equipment used to repair a broken gate are believed to have caused the fire when they ignited flammable chemicals stored nearby. He said they say they believe this would be close to the final death toll, as the figure matched the number of people missing. The building, among a long row of factories in the rundown district of Valenzuela on the northern edge of the Philippine capital, made cheap slippers and sandals for the local market. The footwear had names such as Havana, that sounds like well-known global brands, company employees said. The factory workers toiled for below minimum wages while surrounded by foul-smelling chemicals and weren't aware of fire safety standards, survivors and relatives said. Rodrigo Nabor, whose two sisters were inside the factory and remained unaccounted for, said, quote, "The families can't help but be angry about what happened. We will never forget this." One survivor, Lisandro Mendoza, said he ran out the back door, but that the company had not conducted fire safety education or fire drills during his 5 months in there. Mr. Mendoza said he worked 12-hour days, 7 days a week, for 3,500 pesos, mixing chemicals, and I believe that to be like $35 tops. That's just a rough estimate, ladies and gentlemen, but at any rate. Survivor Janet Victoriano also described lax fire safety standards. Quote, "I had never been involved in a fire drill ever," Miss Victoriano, who had worked at the factory for 5 years, told DZMM radio. She said she escaped because she was near the front door when the blaze started. Talk about being in the right place at the right time, Jay.
Certainly right on that, Corey. Feel for those people over in the Philippines. Thank you very much for that. Corey Evan will be back with the U.S. news and business news a little later on in the program. All right, moving on to our UK news brief tonight. We first start off with new statistics came out today, with in regards to terror-related arrest in the UK, more predominantly in England, Wales, and Scotland, which have reached record levels last year when 338 people were held, according to Scotland Yard. More than half of those arrests were related to Syria, said the Met Office's Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley. Police said more than 700 potential terror suspects are now thought to have traveled to Syria. About half of those people said are to be of significance of concern are believed to have since then returned to the UK. The total number of terror-related arrests was up from 254 in the 2013 to 2014, an increase of about a third. Of the latest arrests, 56 related to suspects under the age of 20, a figure that police say represents an emerging trend. Suspects were also arrested for offenses ranging from fundraising for extremist causes to plotting terrorist attacks. UKIP's leader Nigel Farage has ruled out standing down as a leader of the party despite a bitter row over his future. MEP Patrick O'Flynn earlier claimed that Farage had fallen under the influence of inexperienced advisors, which was followed by the departure of 2 aides. However, Mr. Farage told the Thursday night edition of BBC's Question Time that he had, quote, "a phenomenal level of support within the party," end of quote, leaving just as the Prime Minister was addressing the UK's relationship with the EU would be a massive mistake, he also said. Mr. Farage also cleared up a row of £650,000 in public funding available to UKIP under a scheme to help minor parties fund their MPs' activities, saying he would recommend the party accepted none of it. The UKIP leader stood down after failing to win the seat he was running for in the local area of Thatton South in the general election last week, but was reinstated 3 days later when the party refused to accept his resignation. Asked on the BBC Question Time program about the situation, Mr. Farage said he now accepted it would be the wrong time to step down. And George Osborne has outlined a city devolution plan for the UK. This, more predominantly in the English cities, will be getting powers over housing, transport, planning, and policing under plans set out in his first post-election speech today. In Greater Manchester, which will take on the powers when electing a mayor in 2 years, should become a blueprint for other larger cities, he said. A city's devolution bill will be in the Queen's speech later this month. Labour has claimed that the government's piecemeal approach could mask big cuts to local council spending. According to BBC's assistant political editor Norman Smith, he says that the Chancellor hoped the move would reignite areas such as the Greater Manchester area, not just economically, but also to renew a sense of civic pride. But it is also designed to wrong-foot Labour in their northern heartlands and to represent the Tories in the north, where they have traditionally been on the back foot, he also added. Speaking in Manchester, the Chancellor said the old model of running everything from London was broken and has unbalanced the economy. He also said it made people feel remote from the decisions that affected their lives and added it's not good for our prosperity or our democracy. Mr. Osborne stressed that the government would deliver the devolution to Scotland and Wales as it promised, but he said he wanted to go much further and deliver radical devolution to the greater cities of England and give them the levers to grow their local economy. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead, take a short break here at this time, but when we come back on tonight's program, we have an update on the Trans-Pacific Partnership Bill as it clears a Senate hurdle test vote today. When can it be voted on? We'll have that report in the D.C. news when we come back. Also in the D.C. news tonight, Jeb Bush is being attacked by his own GOP presidential candidates that are not siding with him on his opinion of his brother's differences on the Iraq War. We have all those stories and more, plus Corey Evan has the business news.
Yes, and in addition to jobs, Jay, you might want to support your local El Pollo Loco so they can get the pace going again on their expansion program. They've had a slowdown this season. In lawsuits across America, in addition to New York City nail salon workers suing for back wages, or whatever else they want. In addition to that, I've got Spirit Airlines lawsuit on the docket. You'll hear about that one. And I've got the latest on why Harry Shearer is not going to be back for the newly renewed episodes of The Simpsons. That's all coming up after the break on the Evan Miller Report. You're listening to SHR Media.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in a separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Here's radio. U.S. News Time. I'm Corey Evan. Welcome back to the Evan Miller Report. And this first one is an update on what's going on with the Amtrak train crash. From Fox News, authorities in Philadelphia said that an 8th victim was recovered from the train that crashed when it reached that sharp turn in the residential area of Port Richmond, while reportedly traveling at speeds upwards of 106 an hour. Derek Sawyer, the city's fire commissioner, said the body was discovered inside the front car of the train. The body was found in the wreckage by a cadaver dog. Good dog. Amtrak President Joseph H. Boardman also announced that the Northeast Corridor service will be fully restored either Monday or Tuesday. The news of the recovery was announced as the investigation into the crash turned toward the train's engineer, who reportedly has no recollection of the events leading to the crash. Brandon Bastian of Queens, New York, has turned over to authorities blood samples and his cell phone, according to his lawyer Robert Gogan. This attorney told ABC News Thursday Bastian suffered a concussion, but is cooperating with the investigation and is willing to speak with the NTSB. He remembers driving the train, Goggin said, but, quote, has absolutely no recollection of the incident or anything unusual, unquote. Let's hope he's not being a BS artist about this, but that it's an actual case of amnesia. We'll let the doctors verify that, though. Anyway, Goggin says Bastian recalls being tossed around and apparently being knocked out. He found a bag, grabbed his cell phone, and called 911, he said. Bastian reportedly suffered a concussion and injuries to the legs and was treated at a hospital. Early reports indicated that the engineer refused to give a statement to law enforcement. An NTSB official says the agency will give the man 2 days to recover from the shock of the accident that left 8 dead and sent more than 200 to area hospitals. All passengers are accounted for now, thankfully. Investigators have turned their attention to the train's speed to a sharp turn at the residential town of Port Richmond. The train is believed to have been traveling at speeds of 106 an hour in a section of the track where the speed limit is 50 an hour. NTSB board member Robert Sumwalt told reporters Wednesday that the engineer launched a full emergency brake application a few seconds before the train derailed 11 minutes after leaving the Philadelphia station, crumpling cars and throwing around many of the 243 aboard. Sumwalt said federal accident investigators want to talk to Bastian, but will give him a day or two to recover from the shock of the accident. Philadelphia District Attorney Seth Williams told WTXF Wednesday that it was too early to determine whether to pursue a criminal investigation, explaining that many of the details of the accident have yet to come out. Also Wednesday, authorities recovered the black box from the train and are inspecting video footage recorded from the front of the train moments before the accident. Crews at the scene are still focused on search and rescue since there are a number of passengers still unaccounted for, but the NTSB is simultaneously conducting an investigation and collecting perishable evidence at the site. Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter said it was possible that some of the passengers listed on the train's manifest never boarded the train, while others may not have checked in with authorities. But as I said, since then, the passengers are all accounted for as we know right now. And it's time for a closing bell. Where is that bell? There's the bell that I've been waiting for. And how come when we get a rainy day in California, Wall Street gets a sunny day? Anyway, the Dow's up 191 at 18,252. The NASDAQ follows suit at 50.50, gaining 69 points, dudes. And the S&P gained 22 points to close at 2121. Lucky numbers for them. The fewest claims for jobless benefits in 15 years signals the U.S. labor market continues to strengthen, even as the world's largest economy struggles to regain momentum. The number of applications for unemployment insurance payments unexpectedly fell by 1,000 to 264,000 in the week ended May 9th, pushing the monthly average to the lowest level since April 2000. This, according to Labor Department data issued Thursday in Washington. Another report showed producer prices declined broadly last month. Persistently low firings are typically accompanied by bigger payroll gains, indicating employers probably will continue to beef up staff. That means Fed policymakers are likely to meet their goal of putting more Americans back to work, while the other half of their equation, a pickup in pricing power, is less within reach. Michael Ferroli, chief U.S. economist at J.P. Morgan Chase in New York and a former Fed researcher, said that the Fed will wait he projects the Fed will wait until September to raise its benchmark interest rate, which it has held near zero since late 2008. Businesses have seen muted wholesale costs as a plunge in energy prices in the second half of 2014, and a stronger dollar limited inflation early in the pipeline. Fed officials are looking for signs that price growth will rise toward their goal, 2% annually by their preferred measure, as they consider raising the benchmark rate. From the Detroit News, General Motors Thursday confirmed it will invest $1 billion into its sprawling Warren Tech Center campus, creating 2,600 new jobs over 5 years as it renovates facilities, builds new, and expands some operations. The Detroit automaker said work on its first campus-wide renovation project will begin this month and continue through 2018. Projects include building new design studios, refurbishing existing, and a new parking structure for design employees, constructing a new multi-story information tech building for its growing operation next to the current Infotech Innovation Center, building a new parking deck for Innovation Center workers, and creating more testing facilities in the Advanced Energy Center. A few facilities also will be raised. GM says it also plans for extensive office upgrades across most tech center buildings, including its large vehicle engineering center. The company said buildings will also get new carpet, paint, furniture, and work areas may be reconfigured. Mark Royce, GM's head of global product development, purchasing, and supply chain, said financial issues and its bankruptcy kept the company from upgrading many of the outdated facilities before. GM also is changing how its architects design cars so it's consistent with safety, fuel economy, and CO2 regulatory environments. Royce said Warren will become a central hub for the work globally and will require some people from the global regions coming to Warren. Salary jobs are expected to be added in areas such as engineering, infotech, and design. GM didn't specify if any jobs are transferring from other locations, but Royce said some of the first new jobs could be added around September. Warren officials believe the investment and job growth at GM will create hundreds of spin-off jobs in Warren at businesses such as restaurants, hotels, and suppliers. And Warren Mayor Jim Fouts believes it will help attract new businesses to its downtown region across Van Dyke from the campus. And restaurant chain operator El Pollo Loco Holdings reported weaker than expected quarterly comparable sales and forecast a full-year profit largely below estimates as customer traffic at its restaurants grew at its slowest pace since the company went public in July last year. The Costa Mesa, California-based company were down 11% in aftermarket trading on Thursday. System-wide comparable restaurant sales rose 5.1% in the first quarter, ended April 1st, below the 5.7% rise analysts were expecting, according to research firm Consensus Metrics. Same restaurant sales at company-owned restaurants grew 3.5% in the quarter, a much slower pace than the 5.2% growth rate expected by analysts. The company recorded a 0.1% rise in customer traffic in the quarter, the slowest rate of growth since it debuted on the NASDAQ. They reaffirmed its full-year pro forma earnings forecast of 67 to 71 cents a share, largely below the average analyst estimate of 70 cents a share, according to Thomson Reuters. Revenue rose 11% to $90.4 million, beating the average of $88.5 million. The company's net income rose to $6.8 million, or 17 cents a share, in the first quarter from $5.5 million, or 18 cents a year earlier. Excluding items, El Pollo Loco earned 18 cents a share, beating the average analyst estimate by a whole cent. The company's shares closed at $29.06 on the NASDAQ today, and up to Thursday's close, the stock had risen more than 17% since its July 25th debut. So how about that, Jay? Next time you're swinging by El Pollo Loco, you might want to add on a churro or two, just to help them be able to expand a little bit more.
Yeah, that really depends on California gas prices, which is a whole other conversation.
Yes, this is true. I mean, the cheapest one in town, the one that was the cheapest in town when you were in town, when we carpooled up to Costa Mesa, is now beaten by a couple of cents, but only a couple, I say, because the price there was $3.62 a gallon. What's the lowest you've seen in your area, Jay?
Lowest I could have seen is probably around, I would say, $3.30. So.
Yeah, I guess it's area to area. But I did see signs across the board that average around $3 a gallon. So diesel drivers, if you have a VW Golf diesel, this is your time.
Yeah, so, plan accordingly when it comes to traveling, ladies and gentlemen, because you got to use that gas wisely these days. Not to say I'm going for gas rationing at this point. We would hope we would never have to go into any type of gas rationing here.
That would be what the government wants.
Yeah, that would certainly be the case. All right, Corey Evan with the latest on the business news. Thank you very much for that, Corey. All right, folks, time for the latest on the D.C. news tonight, and we start out tonight in D.C. with an update on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We brought to you this story earlier this week on Tuesday. The Trans-Pacific Partnership cleared a test in the Senate today, giving a resounding thumbs up to legislation that holds the key to President Obama's diplomatic pivot to Asia, just 2 days after Democrats defied Obama to block debate on a bill to fast-track the trade deals such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Through Congress, the Senate voted 65-33 to move ahead with the consideration of the measure. Strong support for the bill on this second go-around suggests senators are unlikely to reject the bill, although heated debate is still expected in the Senate over amendments and later in the House of Representatives, where many Democrats staunchly oppose the Trans-Pacific Partnership on fears trade liberalization will cost U.S. jobs. The about-face came after Democrats won a separate vote on a bill punishing countries that manipulate their currencies to keep their exports cheap, and followed a renewed round of personal lobbying by Obama. 13 of 44 Democrats joined with Republicans, who then voted in lockstep to give backers of the legislation more than 60 votes needed to proceed in the 100-member Senate. Under fast-track rules, the U.S. Congress can approve or reject trade deals such as the TPP deal, but it cannot amend the contents of the pact, a centerpiece of Obama's strategy to counter China's rising economic and diplomatic clout in Asia. So we'll keep you up to date on when that vote happens. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't often ask people to do things on this program, but I think it's time that you call up your congressman, call up your senators, and tell them this is a bad idea. We've had Curtis Ellis on this program less than a month ago stating that this is a bad idea, and it's not only going to cost U.S. jobs, but it is also going to cost America the freedom to trade its own goods overseas. So, ladies and gentlemen, call your congressmen, call your senators, tell them this is a bad idea before this actually goes and this gets passed. Just stating there, ladies and gentlemen, as a concerned citizen on this one for you. Okay, moving on, presidential politics now. Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley plans to announce his decision on a presidential campaign May the 30th in Baltimore, of all places, preparing for what would be a long-shot bid for the Democratic nomination. O'Malley would enter the 2016 race as a relatively unknown figure nationally and face a steep test against the current frontrunner, Hillary Clinton. O'Malley, an ex-Baltimore mayor who has visited early voting states, has tried to represent himself as a champion of progressive causes and a fresh face for liberals hesitant to support Clinton. O'Malley was holding a Thursday night conference call with top supporters to provide an update and discuss plans for the announcement. His plans were described by an aide who was not authorized to publicly discuss internal planning and spoke on condition of anonymity, saying, quote, "My timeline for a while has been by the end of May and remains my timeline, so stay tuned," O'Malley told reporters Wednesday in New Hampshire, home of the nation's first presidential primary. O'Malley's announcement date was first reported by the likes of the Washington Post. And Corey Evan has a story regarding the Clintons tonight, and this has regards to one ABC News anchor.
Oh, yes, and for this one I gotta do the voice, Jay.
Bill from Alabama. Bill from Alabama. Or is it Arkansas? I think it's Arkansas.
I think it's Arkansas, wherever it is. Yeah, never mind. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that we need to roast George Snuffleupagus. This is from the Washington Post. ABC News chief anchor George Snuffleupagus made 3 substantial contributions to my foundation, ABC confirmed today, in apparent conflict with his duties as a journalist. Snuffleupagus contributed $25,000 in 2012, 2013, and just last year to the charitable quote-unquote organization headed by me, the former president, and my wife Hillary, and my daughter Chelsea. PBS co-anchor Judy Woodruff also said that she had made a one-time donation to the charity, $1,000 in 2010. So beware of her as well, I suppose. And Senator Rand Paul, a presidential candidate, said today that Stephanopoulos' donations should preclude him from moderating any debates during the 2016 presidential campaign. How about that, Mr. Miller? Yet another contribution to my bankroll.
Well, we thank you for your honesty there, Mr. President, in letting us know that the likes of George Snuffleupagus is donating to the Clinton campaign. Thank you very much. That's former President Bill Clinton joining us live from the state of Arkansas. Thank you very much.
Yes, and the city of marijuana as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure, ladies and gentlemen. All right, the comedy segment over on that little part of DC News. Let's get back to the serious stuff. John Bolton, the former U.S. ambassador to the UN and one of the Republican Party's most prominent national security hawks, has confirmed that he will not run for president. In a media conference call and separate video to supporters, Bolton said he would work through his political action committees and PACs to influence the 2016 elections by pushing candidates to promote aggressive foreign and military policies. He said, quote, "I believe I can make the strongest contribution to our future by continuing as a cleaner and consistent advocate for a strong Reaganite foreign policy that values peace through strength," Bolton said in the video, but he told reporters his own campaign was not feasible, saying that an established political class in this country makes it harder for lesser-known candidates to compete seriously for the presidency. He says, "I'm not complaining," he said, "I'm a realist." And Republican candidate Jeb Bush has reversed position Thursday on whether the U.S. should have invaded Iraq, reflecting a struggle between his own man in his expected run for the White House and remaining loyal to his brother who started the war, former President George W. Bush. Jeb, the Common Core Bush's days-long search for the right formation to describe his position on Iraq appeared to expose some rustiness on the campaign trail 8 years after serving as governor of the state of Florida. George W. Bush has privately made it clear to his brother that it's okay to put some distance between the two of them, a source close to the Bush family said. But the Common Core Bush's loyalty, plus his belief that the service of people who fought and died in Iraq must be respected, led him to a wobbly response in a recent Fox News interview with Megyn Kelly earlier this week when he said he would have invaded Iraq. He finally strained it all out, at least according to some today, at a town hall event in Tempe, Arizona, ahead of an evening appearance before members of the Republican National Committee in Scottsdale, saying, quote, "Knowing what we know now, I would have not engaged. I would have not gone to Iraq," Bush said. Jeb Bush has said throughout his exploration of a run for the Republican nomination for president in 2016 that while he loves his family, he will be his own man, or in his own words, as he stated, "my own man," as president. Bush told reporters in Tempe that it was not easy to break away from the positions of his brother, who ordered the U.S. military into Iraq in 2003 based on the intelligence that Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction, which, according to some, were never found. House Speaker John Boehner said today that this week's fatal Amtrak crash wasn't caused by a lack of federal funds and mocked a reporter for even asking about it, saying, quote, "Are you really going to ask such a stupid question?" Boehner spoke a day after the Republican-run House Appropriations Committee voted to cut Amtrak's budget for next year to $1.1 billion, a $250 million reduction. The panel also voted down a Democratic effort to boost federal funds for the railroad by more than $1 billion. Federal investigators have said the train was traveling in Philadelphia 106 miles per hour before hitting a curve when the speed limit is 50. The accident, of course, occurred in Philadelphia, as Corey Evan has been reporting. And another person has added their name to the list of people wanting to run for Senator Barbara Boxer's seat here in the state of California. Loretta Sanchez has added her name to the likes of State Attorney General Kamala Harris. No further word on any other candidates, but there is a rumor going around that Tom Belcaro, of the former president and leader of the state California Republican Party, may throw his hat into that ring. And a major update here in California when it comes to global socialism today. After nearly an hour-long heated debate from lawmakers on both sides of the issue, the state Senate took another step forward today, requiring vaccines for all children entering public schools in California today. This has to do with that bill, SB 277. State senators approved a proposal that would eliminate the personal and religious exemptions when it came to vaccines. One Democrat in Sacramento said, quote, "Vaccines are necessary to protect us, but the protection has been eroding," end of quote. Medical waivers would be available only for children who have health problems. Other unvaccinated children would have to be homeschooled, according to people in the legislators. Supporters of the bill say the exemptions in danger lies by allowing preventable diseases like the measles to spread. Exemptions hurt kids. I haven't heard of any religion that actually says we're against vaccinations, said another senator from Artesia in California. Critics say the measure ignores parents who have their own personal reasons for having their children vaccinated. Why is it a religious exemption is so scary to this Senate body, said Senator Joel Anderson from San Diego. Along with religious concerns, some lawmakers expressed concern that vaccines can trigger medical conditions such as autism. It is clear that a large portion of concerned parents will likely withhold their children from public schools because of their concerns or lack of comfort from their vaccination process, said Senator John Murlock of Orange County, who also the MC at the 15th Annual Eagle Forum Conference 2 weeks ago. Supporters of the bill, which passed on a 25-10 vote, say the medical science has been debunked by those claims. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for tonight's Lawsuits Across America.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Nope.
Keeping them away from the schools would keep them away from the Common Core if they do that. But at any rate, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated and come to order. Lawsuits is now in session. First item on the docket, a federal judge today threw out a class action suit brought by investors against aircraft parts maker Spirit AeroSystems. The company and four of its officers made misleading statements that artificially inflated its stock price. Oh, dear. The shareholder lawsuit was filed after an October 2012 announcement that the Wichita-based company had recorded $590 million forward losses on 6 manufacturing contracts. Spirit AeroSystems stock price dropped $6.55 a share, or 30%, following the announcement. Investors sued in June 2013 in U.S. District Court in Kansas, alleging violations of federal securities laws. They alleged that they bought Spirit stock at artificially inflated prices because of misrepresentations and omissions of material facts related to the progress of the company's cost-cutting efforts. In dismissing their lawsuit, U.S. District Judge Eric Milgren ruled that shareholders failed to show any allegedly misleading statements or material to an investor deciding whether to buy or sell. The judge also said they didn't show the company or officers made any statements with the intent to deceive or with recklessness. Spirit issued a statement saying it believes its company and the officers named in the lawsuit have been vindicated by the judge's action. Then CEO Jeffrey Turner, CFO Philip Anderson, the VP of Spirit's Oklahoma operations Alexander Kamant, and the VP of Spirit's 787 program Terry George were all named in the suit. Attorneys for the plaintiffs didn't immediately respond to an email seeking comment on the judge's decision. The lawsuit pointed to a total of 86 misleading statements or omissions allegedly made by the officers before the loss announcement, but Mellgren says it's unclear the company and officers had anything to gain by delaying announcement of the loss to October 2012. Spirit Aerosystems stock price immediately plummeted, and Turner announced his resignation shortly afterward. And here's one involving Charter Communications. Anna Ralphs, the Charter customer who sued after a massive cable outage in St. Louis during the championship bout between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao, has dropped her suit against the cable giant. Ralphs filed her federal suit in St. Louis on May 5th, 3 days after the fight that was billed by some as the fight of the century. She alleged she paid $100 to view the fight on Charter's pay-per-view, but that she and thousands like her were unable to view the program for several hours until the end of the main fight's fourth round. The lawsuit sought class action status. Her fight with the cable company was short-lived, however. On May 6, Ralph filed a motion to dismiss the case, according to court documents. Ralph didn't list a reason for the dismissal, and she couldn't be reached for comment. Her motion for dismissal states that both sides will pay for their own legal fees in the case. Thankfully, that's all over with. And two New York City manicurists on Thursday filed a proposed class action suit claiming 4 nail salons routinely violated minimum wage and overtime laws days after a New York Times investigation revealed rampant wage theft and hazardous conditions in the industry. The lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court in Manhattan said employees at the salons, which have the same owners and are all on Manhattan's Upper East Side, are paid $60 or less for 10-hour shifts and often denied breaks. Yeah. The lawsuit says the salons, Nails Way, Now Low Nails, Nails Medic, and Nail Skewer, these are weird names here. At any rate, they violated New York's minimum wage law, according to the lawsuit, and a federal law requiring time and a half for overtime, as well as meal and rest breaks. One of the owners of the salon, Surya Garang, didn't respond to a request for comment. The New York Times over the last week has published a series of articles that say nail salon owners routinely exploit employees, particularly immigrants, paying them as little as $30 a day and failing to provide equipment or ventilation to safely deal with toxic chemicals. Gregory Filosa, the lawyer who filed Thursday's lawsuit, said in an interview that his clients Blanca Fernandez, very similar names, and Gloria Marca approached him before the Times articles were published. The minimum wage claims were filed on behalf of anyone who worked at the salons over the last 6 years, while the OT and break claims go back 3 years. Filosa said the minimum wage class would probably include more than 50 people. In the response to the Times articles, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, a Democrat, said this week that he was creating a task force to investigate nail salons and establish new rules to protect manicurists from harmful chemicals. Oh dear, this is just one of those.
Regulation. Oh boy, here we go.
Yes, this is the government
calling in sick for work, saying, "Hey, I can't come to work. I chipped the nail." Take care of it.
Oh man, you're so right on that one. Oh man, ladies, I'm sorry if we offended you, but in some cases, I assume Jay is right. Yeah. Oh, man. On that note, I declare today's lawsuits across America a case dismissed. Good grief.
I don't know if it's the rain in Southern California, but something about, more regulation on hair salons. Come on.
It's like acid rain.
Oh, really? It just ticks me off. We wasting our taxpayer dollars on regulation of salons. My goodness, this is why I hate bureaucratic red tape government these days. My goodness. All right, on that note, let's talk something a little more entertaining. And Corey Evan has the latest. One particular person working with The Simpsons gonna be leaving soon?
Sure. That's the name that you're gonna remember. All of you. It's all so Simpsons-esque in its quick and cutting efficiency. A lawyer holding a briefcase and a terminated contract shows up, utters a few bureaucratic words, and suddenly half of a community goes poof. This from the Washington Post. After this Sunday's season finale, barring a reprieve from real-life Judge Roy Snyder, much of Springfield becomes a ghost town. That's because Harry Shearer, the man of so many voices, including Snyder's, is reportedly not being brought back for The Simpsons, which last week was renewed for seasons 27 and 28. Shearer, who has been there since the post-Tracy Ullman beginning, said that squabbles with his Simpsons employment overlords are not about his pay, reportedly $300,000 an episode, but about his freedom to do outside work from radio to the stage, a liberty he said he's enjoyed for decades. Either way, this announcement tolls not merely a power tactic amid contract negotiations, as has happened in the show's past with the main players. In this case, Simpsons honchos have separated Shearer from the herd and cut him loose. As showrunner Al Jean told CNN Money this morning about the coming 2 seasons, Harry Shearer will not be within the show. But what about the virtual herd of characters that Shearer so prominently voices? Quote, "We do not plan to kill off his characters," Jean told CNN in an email, "but replace them with the most talented members of the voiceover community." And just like that, talent agents are hot on their mobiles as they sip their coffee bean and tea leaf hard past Santa Monica Boulevard and pray for both California water and a call back from the offices of Gene and show co-creator, that is, Jimmy L. Brooks, who tweeted Thursday that he still wanted to make peace. Yeah, we'll see what kind of peace they can make at this point. But in the meantime,
they need to settle their differences, sit down with a cup of Earl Grey tea and have a summer. Oh wait, President Obama tried it here. It don't work.
Yes, thanks for pointing that one out, Jay. I better polish up my demo reel and send it on over to Fox. Any rate, Johnny Depp's Yorkshire Terriers, Pistol and Boo are getting ready to jump on a private jet in a bid to save the pooch's lives, according to the Daily Mail. The U.S. actor and star of Pirates of the Caribbean is facing a large fine over the breach of Australia's strict quarantine laws, while the fate of his dogs remains unclear. And I will finally wrap this up with Nick Frediani winning American Idol. He quit thinking about the competition. That's apparently how he won it. The moment came back in April, says the 29-year-old Connecticut native who took the title over Clark Beckham Wednesday. Frediani was covering Katy Perry's Teenage Dream, and everything just fell into place. Okay, the Teenage Dream thing, I think that's where I cut it, because anyone who's listened to that knows about the bits about a hotel room, building a Ford sheets, and skin-tight jeans. Yeah.
Yeah, let's...
No, I'll say no more.
Yeah, let's clean that up. Corey Evan with the Entertainment Report. Thank you very much for that. Programming notes for tomorrow's Evan Miller Report. The president of the National Legal Forum, Ed Martin, will join us to talk about his new venture with the Washington Times as its new opinion writer. That's tomorrow on the Evan Miller Report at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. On that note, that concludes tonight's Evan Miller Report for this Thursday, May the 14th, 2015. For Corey Evan and all of us here at SHR Media, we wish you a great night. Coming up after the weather with the BBC Met Office's Sarah Keith Lucas is the Exceptional Conservative Show. Good night, everybody.
Is due to sweep across the Central Plains during the course of Friday night and on into the weekend. So a slightly quieter window of weather at the moment for the likes of Texas and Oklahoma. This weather front brought some heavy rain. It's now shifting its way further eastwards. Still some heavy rain pushing up towards the Great Lakes, Winnipeg too. And towards the west of that system, we've got cooler air in charge coming in from the north. So scattered showers, heavy at times, fairly unsettled generally in the west and for central areas. Meanwhile, further east, warmer air spilling in from the Gulf of Mexico. So if we look at Friday's weather in a little bit more detail then, starting off in the west, well, there'll be scattered showers across British Columbia, relatively mild here. Cooler conditions further south with heavy showers at times, particularly across the higher ground for Washington State, Oregon, and some welcome rainfall to come across California too. Meanwhile, further east, there's a severe weather risk across Texas, Oklahoma, up towards Nebraska as well. There could be further tornadoes around and large hail. New York, largely dry, 20 Celsius or so here. A pleasant day in the sunshine. Largely dry, in fact, down at the east coast, but towards the Gulf of Mexico, coastal areas here receiving some heavy rain with that moist airflow coming in from the south. Montreal could well see some rain during the course of Saturday, clearing by Sunday. New York remains largely dry and quite mild at around 24 degrees through the course of the weekend. Meanwhile, in the west, there'll be a little bit of rain at times for Seattle, turning a little bit warmer too for Los Angeles.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.